Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi Masechet Eduyot. We are up to Perek Bet, Mishnah Chet. Today's Mishnayot should be Le'ilui Nishmat, Neria Ben Svetlana Ranbai, Eliyahu Ben Burchai Israelov, Chana Bat Miriam, Sason Ben Rain, Yoshua Ben Shifra, Menuchatam Began Eden, Amen. And Lehavdil Ben Chaim Lechaim, V'derefua Shelemav, Daniel Shalom Ben Rosa, Betoch Shachol Israel, and Dachama Merav, Binyamin Otzion Chai Ben Dvorah. Shelosha Devarim Amar Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva said three things. Al Shnaim Hodulo, the sages agreed with him about two of them. Val Echad Lo Hodulo, and they disagreed with him about one of them. The first law that the sages agreed with concerns Tumat Midras, literally the Tumah of something that is stepped on. When a Zav, Zava, Nida, or a woman who gave birth puts his or her weight on an object, it becomes Tameh, even if the Tameh person did not touch it. Moreover, the object becomes an avatuma, like the tumeh person himself. However, this form of transmission, which is called tumat midras, does not work unless the object was made to support a person. For example, a chair or pillow. Rabbi Akiva rules that a certain object meets this requirement. Al sandal shel sayadim. Rabbi Akiva ruled about the sandal of a lime worker. These were wooden sandals worn by lime workers in order to protect their feet from being burned by the lime. Shu tameh midras, that it can become tameh through midras. Even though the sandal's primary use is to protect the worker's foot from being burned by the lime, it is also meant to support him as he walks. It is therefore subject to the law of midras. After the lime workers finished working, they would walk home in these shoes. Because the shoes were also meant for walking and therefore to support the wearer's weight, they can receive tumat midras. The second law that the sages agreed with concerns the ability of a broken earthenware oven to become tameh. The oven of the times of the Mishnah was shaped like the walls of a big pot. It did not have a floor of its own, but was cemented to the ground, so the ground served as its floor. In order for it to be considered a utensil that is capable of receiving tumah, its sides must be at least 4 tvachim high, as it says in Kelim, chapter 5, Mishnah 1. The Mishnah discusses the law of an oven that was split across its width, so that it is shorter than it was before. Val shiaret tanu arba'ah. And Rabbi Akiva ruled about the remaining part of a broken earthenware oven that it can become tameh only if it is at least 4 tvachim high. Shayu omrim shlosha, for it had previously been ruled that a height of 3 tvachim is enough. So Rabbi Akiva testified that in fact 4 tvachim are required. According to the original ruling, although a new oven is unable to receive tumah unless it is 4 tvachim high, once it becomes capable of receiving tumah, it keeps that capability, even if it breaks and its height is reduced to 3 tvachim, but not less than 3. Rabbi Akiva, however, holds that a broken oven is treated the same as a new oven. Just as a new oven must be at least 4 tvachim high, so must a broken oven have that height. After Rabbi Akiva testified that the minimum height for a broken oven is 4 tvachim, the sages agreed with him. And the same minimum applies in the case of an oven that is already tameh. If it breaks, it stays tameh as long as it has a height of at least 4 tvachim. If its height is reduced less than 4 tvachim, it automatically becomes tahor. The Hodulot, the sages agreed with Rabbi Akiva concerning these two laws. The third law is about a chair that has a box-like frame of 4 walls with 3 boards side by side on top as the seat. If the 2 outer boards are removed, or only the middle board is removed, a person can still sit on the chair. But if an outer board and the middle board are removed, leaving only one outer board and one side, one cannot sit on it. The Mishnah considers whether it can still receive tumah. This is also a Mishnah in Kelim, chapter 22, Mishnah 6. Ve'al echad lo hodu lo, and concerning one law, they did not agree with Rabbi Akiva. Al kiseh shenitnu shnayim mechipuyav ze b'tzad ze. This dispute was about a chair from which 2 boards that were next to each other were removed, leaving just one board at the side. Rabbi Akiva metameh, for Rabbi Akiva rules that although it can no longer be used as a seat, it is capable of becoming tameh because it can be used as a container. Although the chair is no longer fit for its original purpose, Rabbi Akiva rules that it can become tameh because it still has some use. It can be used as a container in which to hold produce. V'chachamim metaharin, but the sages rule that it is tahor, it cannot become tameh because it is no longer fit for the purpose for which it was made. The sages reason that since the chair was made primarily as a seat, once it becomes unfit for that purpose, it loses its status as a utensil that can become tameh, even if it has some other use. Although the Mishnah says that 2 of the boards were removed, the dispute would apply also where all 3 were removed. Even in that case, Rabbi Akiva would rule that it can become tameh since it can be used as a container. The Mishnah specifies a case where just 2 boards were removed in order to teach that the sages deemed the chair incapable of receiving tumah, despite the fact that it still has 1 board. And the Rav tells us that Alayev follows the opinion of the Chachamim. And that is end of Mishnah Chet. Mishnah Tet continues with the teachings of Rabbi Akiva. He used to say, Ha'av zochel ben benoi uvchoach uvosher uvchochma uvshanim. A father through his merits can benefit his son with beauty, strength, wealth, wisdom, and years of life. A righteous father may merit to have a son blessed with beauty, physical strength, wealth, wisdom, and long life. Alternatively, the Mishnah refers to a natural matter. It is natural for a son to take after his father in these 5 areas. Beauty, strength, intelligence, and longevity are all physical traits that are commonly passed from one generation to the next. Wealth is likewise passed from father to son by way of inheritance. Sometimes God rewards a father by promising that he will bless a specific generation of his descendants, such as his 3rd or 4th generation, meaning his grandchildren or his great-grandchildren. Uvmispara dorot lefanav, and a father through his merits can benefit his descendants a certain number of generations after him. Vuaketz, and that generation is the time for the reward, meaning when God promises a person that his descendants will be blessed in the future, the blessing arrives after a particular number of generations and not necessarily after a particular number of years. Shenemar, as it is stated in Isaiah chapter 41 verse 4, Korea dorot merosh, he who proclaimed the generations from the beginning, which means that God arranges the affairs of mankind according to the generations. The Mishnah elaborates, Afal pi shenemar va'avadum ve'inu otam 400 shana, although it is stated in the book of Bereshit, chapter 15, verses 13 and 14, that God said to Avraham regarding the redemption of his descendants from slavery in Egypt, they will serve them and they will oppress them for 400 years, and then they will leave with great wealth, which specifies a certain number of years. V'ne'emar v'dor revi yashuvu hena, it is also stated, verse 15 there, and the 4th generation shall return here, which identifies a particular generation. Kehat, son of Levi, belonged to the youngest generation of Jacob's family that went down to Egypt. Kehat was the father of Amram, and Amram was the father of Moshe. The sons of Moshe entered Eretz Yisrael. Therefore, the period between entering Egypt and entering Eretz Yisrael lasted 4 generations. The number of generations was the main calculation in this case. For the exile in Egypt did not last 400 years. It lasted only 210. But it was indeed the 4th generation that entered Eretz Yisrael. God set 2 dates for the redemption, one expressed in years, 400 years, and the other expressed in generations. The 4th generation, the number of generations was meant more literally than the number of years, for it was in fact the 4th generation that entered Eretz Yisrael, whereas the number of years spent in Egypt was not 400, but only 210. In the merit of our forefathers, God decided to start the count of 400 years, not from the entry into Egypt, but from the birth of Yitzchak, making the exile in Egypt 100 and 190 years sooner. It comes out that the number of generations remained the same, while the number of years to be spent in Egypt was adjusted. So we see that the primary calculation is the one expressed in generations. And that is the Nabotai of today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen v'amen.